So, how do you build a safety culture that actually works? Not just with some vague posters on a wall, but with a real, detailed blueprint. Today, we're going to break down a real-world plan from a high-risk industry, looking at how clear roles, hard targets, and non-stop training are used to stop disaster before it can even start. Just picture the stakes for a second. Thousands of gallons of flammable liquid on the move every single day. One tiny mistake? Yeah, that could be catastrophic. So how on earth do you manage that kind of risk? Well, it all boils down to answering one single fundamental question. To keep things from going wrong, who exactly is responsible? And that question right there is our foundation. Because look, before you can even think about rules or training, you've got to build a clear, rock-solid chain of responsibility for safety. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Safety is everyone's responsibility. Sounds a little bit like a corporate slogan, right? But in this case, it's literally the core principle of their official policy. It's a huge shift away from just dumping safety on one department's desk. Instead, it's a duty that's baked into every single job description. But, okay, how do you actually make that happen in the real world? Well, you make it real by defining it super clearly. This breakdown shows exactly how that shared duty translates into specific actions. And notice the logic here. It makes a ton of sense. Management, they're not on the ground, so their job is strategic, providing the leadership and the resources. Supervisors are that crucial link, implementing procedures right there on site. And for employees and contractors, it's all about personal accountability, following the rules, and maybe most importantly, speaking up and reporting hazards. See? Everyone has a distinct, vital part to play. Okay, so now we know who is responsible. The next logical question is, what are they all responsible for? Like, what does winning actually look like here? This is where we get out of the philosophy and into the hard numbers, the measurable targets. And here's how they turn that big vision into concrete, real-deal goals for 2025. And these are not vague wishes, folks. The targets are super specific, and you can measure them. 100% participation in safety training, no exceptions. A 98% or higher compliance rate for personal protective equipment. And exactly 2 fire drills per site every year. These are numbers you can track, which turns a commitment into a promise. But among all those numbers, there's one that just leaps off the page. 0. That's the target for what they call lost time injuries, or LTIs. An LTI is basically any injury so bad that an employee can't come back for their next scheduled shift. So this isn't just a goal, it's the ultimate benchmark. The entire system, every single role, rule, and training session is engineered to hit this one perfect number. All right, so how do you actually build a team that can hit that 0 injury target? Let's switch things up and look at it from the perspective of a brand new employee. You walk in the door, and on day 1, you're in a mandatory induction. And believe me, this isn't just about filling out paperwork. It's the first critical step on your safety journey. And this process is seriously rigorous. It's not just some video you watch in a corner and doze off. No way. It starts in a classroom, moves to a multimedia presentation, and then, and this is so important, a physical tour of the actual worksite. You see the hazards with your own eyes, you walk the escape routes, you find the assembly points, and then it all wraps up with a written test, just to make sure you didn't just hear the info, you actually understood it. And the stuff they teach is just as thorough. They connect the big, high-level company policy to the nitty-gritty, practical, life-saving details. Things like how to use a fire extinguisher, what specific dangers exist right here on this site, and exactly how to report something if you see it's unsafe. The whole point is to make sure absolutely no one starts work without this baseline of essential knowledge. But of course, safety isn't a one-and-done kind of deal, right? You don't just learn it once and you're good forever. A truly strong safety culture needs constant reinforcement, continuous learning, long after that first day is a distant memory. This annual timeline really shows how that commitment plays out in practice. It's a really smart, layered plan. You start broad, with a general orientation in January, then you dive into specific skills like fire safety in March and first aid in June. And this is key. There's a dedicated refresher course in September. That's designed to fight what I call knowledge fade and keep safety right at the front of everyone's mind. It's a deliberate cycle of learning and reinforcing. So, who makes all this training actually happen? This is where we pull back the curtain on the logistics. And spoiler alert, it is a massive team effort. The HSS unit, that's Health, Safety, Security, and Environment, they plan the training. But it's the HR department that's responsible for making sure people actually show up. And then you have the operations unit, who has to juggle all the work schedules to make it possible for people to attend without shutting everything down. It just goes to show you how deeply integrated safety training is across the whole company. So as we start to bring this all together, it really comes back to that one central idea. From the executive who sets the budget all the way down to the driver doing their pre-trip check, a truly safe workplace is built by every single person every single day. And this quote from the policy, it brings us right back to where we started. It's not just a nice-sounding sentence. It is the guiding principle that powers everything we just talked about: the defined roles, the tough targets, the nonstop training. It's the whole idea behind the blueprint. And that really leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? We've just seen how one company builds its safety system, brick by brick, person by person. It kind of makes you think, if a safety culture really depends on the strength of every single individual link in the chain, how strong is the chain where you are?